It is the 4th of December, 1971, in the little Swiss town of Montreux, on the shore of Lake Geneva. Inside a grand old gambling casino, Frank Zappa is on stage, the room is packed, and 5 members of a British hard rock band are somewhere in the crowd, watching. They have come to this town to make a record. But right now, in the middle of the show, somebody in the audience raises a flare gun and fires it straight up into the ceiling. The ceiling is woven rattan, dry as paper, and it catches instantly. Within minutes, the entire casino is burning, and 1,000 people are scrambling for the exits. And those 5 musicians are about to walk out into the cold, look across the lake, and write the single most famous guitar riff in the history of the world about the fire they are watching right now. Hold on to that, because those 4 notes went on to become the first thing that millions of people ever learned to play on a guitar. It is scribbled on school desks. It is the sound of every music shop on a Saturday afternoon. But almost nobody who plays it knows 2 things. The first is that the song is not a poem, or a metaphor, or a bit of mystical imagery. It is a news report. And the second is that you are almost certainly playing it wrong. And here is the part that almost nobody knows. The band who wrote it did not think it was any good. They very nearly left it off the album entirely, because they were sure the whole thing was a throwaway, a silly little story song that would never mean anything to anyone. We will get to that, I promise. First, you have to throw out what you think this song is about, because so many people get it wrong. It is not a song about the sea. It is not a song about drugs. It is not a metaphor for anything at all. It is a word-for-word account of the night a band watched a building burn to the ground, told in plain language exactly as it happened, to real people with real names. The song is Smoke on the Water. The band is Deep Purple. And this is the true story of the greatest disaster ever set to music. To understand it, you have to understand where Deep Purple were at the end of 1971. They were one of the loudest, heaviest bands on earth. Ritchie Blackmore on guitar, Ian Gillan on vocals, Roger Glover on bass, John Lord on organ, Ian Pace on drums, pioneers of the enormous hard rock sound that would soon be called heavy metal. And they had come to Montreux, a quiet resort town on a Swiss lake, to record a brand new album. Here was the plan. They had rented the Rolling Stones mobile recording studio, a truck full of gear, and they were going to record inside the Montreux casino, a grand old entertainment palace on the water. The casino was run in part by a local man named Claude Nobbs, a music lover who organized the town's jazz festival. Everything was booked. The truck was there. All they had to do was wait for the venue to clear so they could start work. And the night before they were due to begin, the casino was hosting one last show, Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. Deep Purple went along to watch. The place was full. The band on stage was flying. And then, partway through the set, it happened. A member of the audience pointed a flare gun at the ceiling and pulled the trigger. The flare buried itself in the dry woven ceiling, and the fire spread so fast that people barely understood what was happening before the whole hall was filling with smoke. Here is the thing you need to know, because it is the reason this story is not a tragedy. Everyone got out. The casino burned completely to the ground, but not a single person died. And part of the reason for that was one man. Claude Nobbs, the same man who had booked the band, ran back into the burning building, again and again, and pulled people out through the windows and the doors. Deep Purple watched him do it, and when they wrote the song, they put him in it forever by name. Funky Claude, running in and out, pulling kids out of the fire. A real hero, immortalized in a rock song. That night, from their hotel across the water, the band watched the casino burn down to nothing. And as it burned, all the smoke from the fire drifted out low and flat across the surface of Lake Geneva, hanging there under the night sky. Roger Glover has said that he woke up not long after with 3 words already stuck in his head, words he did not even fully understand yet. Smoke on the Water. He wrote them down. He had just named the song without knowing it. But when the sun came up, romance turned into a genuine disaster, because their studio was now a pile of smoking ash. They had a recording truck, a booked album, a ticking clock, and absolutely nowhere left to record. The whole reason they had come to Montreux had burned down in a single night. Most bands would have packed up and gone home. Deep Purple decided to stay and find somewhere. Anywhere. And what they had to do to finish the record is a story even stranger than the fire. If you love finding out that a song you have heard 10,000 times is hiding a wild, true story in plain sight, take 1 second and hit subscribe, because how they actually recorded this thing is the best part of all. First, they found an empty local theater called the Pavilion and hauled all their gear inside. They set up, they started playing, and they were so loud that the neighbors called the authorities and the police shut them down almost immediately. But not before they had captured the basic track of one particular song, the loud, ominous one built on that 4-note riff. The very take at the heart of Smoke on the Water was recorded in a building they were about to be thrown out of. So they moved again, this time into the Grand Hotel. A huge old hotel that was completely empty, closed up for the winter, freezing cold and stripped bare. They ran cables down the corridors, propped mattresses against the windows to deaden the sound, and recorded the rest of the album in the hallways of an abandoned hotel with their breath fogging in the air. The song even says it: empty, cold, and bare. They were not being poetic. They were describing the room they were standing in. And now, the riff. Because this is the piece of craft that matters most. That 4-note figure Ritchie Blackmore came up with is, without much argument, the most famous guitar riff ever written. But here is the secret hiding inside it. It is not power chords, the way most people assume. Blackmore plays it in parallel fourths, 2 notes at once, moving together, and it is that interval, those 2 notes locked side by side, that gives the riff its thick, dark, almost menacing weight. Blackmore has even said the shape of it owes something to Beethoven. 4 notes. And they carry the whole song. And this is the detail that drives every guitar teacher on the planet slightly insane. Almost everybody who picks up Smoke on the Water plays it wrong. They play it as single notes, or as chunky power chords, and it comes out thin and clumsy and just slightly off, because they are missing the 2-note interval that is the entire point. It is the most played riff in the history of the instrument, and it might also be the most misplayed. You have almost certainly heard it butchered 100 times, without ever realizing there was a right way to do it. Now listen to the words one more time, because their plainness is the whole genius. Most rock lyrics reach for mystery. These do the opposite. They name the flare gun. They name Funky Claude. They name the Grand Hotel. They name the smoke hanging over the lake. There is no code to crack, no hidden meaning to decode. It is pure journalism set to a riff. 5 men calmly narrating the worst and strangest week of their recording lives in the exact order it happened. And here is the twist that almost sank the whole thing. Deep Purple did not think this song was special, at all. To them, it was almost a joke, a story song, a bit of filler about their disastrous trip, thrown onto the album to round it out. It was not meant to be a single. Some of the band reportedly thought it was too simple, too obvious, too commercial to matter. The most recognizable riff in rock history was very nearly left in the pile of throwaways. When the album Machine Head came out in 1972, it was a monster, one of the defining hard rock records of its era. And when Smoke on the Water was finally released as a single, the song the band had shrugged off became the one thing that would define them for the rest of time. The throwaway turned into the crown jewel. The filler became the flag. And then something happened that took the song even further than the band. Those 4 notes escaped. They floated free of Deep Purple entirely and became something bigger. The universal first riff, The sound of a beginner's electric guitar in a bedroom. The thing scratched onto the back of a school notebook. The 4 notes that every single kid on Earth reaches for the first time they hold the instrument. It stopped being a song you listen to and became a rite of passage you perform. To this day, it is probably the most recognizable riff on the planet. More famous, honestly, than the band who wrote it. Crowds of hundreds and even thousands of guitarists have gathered in public squares to play those 4 notes together at once. A wall of sound that started as a flare gun in a Swiss casino. A near tragedy became the single most shared piece of music on the instrument. And Funky Claude Nobs, the man who ran into the fire, went on to build the Montreux Jazz Festival into one of the most beloved music events in the entire world, welcoming the greatest musicians alive to that same little lakeside town for decades. He carried that same warmth and that same courage his whole life. And when he finally passed away, the song was his eulogy, playing around the world. The man who ran into a burning building had been made immortal inside the biggest riff in rock and roll. That is the strange miracle of this song. Almost every anthem you love invents a fantasy, a fictional lover, an imaginary world, a story dressed up to sound bigger than life. This one did the exact opposite. It simply told the truth. What happened, in the order it happened, to real people, with their real names left in. And somehow the plainest possible story, told without a single ounce of poetry, became the most unforgettable song of all. Because here is why it will never leave you, even if you have never heard of Montreux or Machine Head. Your hands know this song, whether your ears remember it or not. You played those 4 notes, or you watched a friend play them, the very first time you ever picked up a guitar. That riff lives in the muscle memory of the entire world. A fire that should have ended a band's trip in disaster, instead handed the planet the first thing it would ever learn to play. So here are 3 things to take with you. 1. The fact. Smoke on the Water is not a metaphor, and it is not mystical. It is a true eyewitness account of the night the Montreux casino burned to the ground during a Frank Zappa concert, written by the band who stood and watched it happen. Right down to the real name of the man, Claude Nobs, who ran into the flames to pull people out. 2. The craft lesson. The most famous guitar riff on Earth is only 4 notes, but it is played in fourths, 2 notes moving together. And that hidden interval is exactly why it sounds so heavy, and exactly why almost everyone who tries it plays it wrong. The simplest riff in the world has a secret in it. And 3, the one that stays with you. The band who made it were sure it was filler. They almost threw it away, and it became a rite of passage for every guitarist who has ever lived. Never trust an artist to know which of their songs is the great one. Sometimes the throwaway is the masterpiece. You just cannot see it while the building is still on fire. So tell me, was Smoke on the Water the first thing you ever learned to play, or the first riff you ever heard someone else play badly? And be honest, were you playing it right? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story changed the way you hear those 4 notes, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because there is a new hidden story behind a song you love every single week. Thank you for listening. And the next time you hear those 4 notes ring out across a guitar shop, remember, you are hearing an eyewitness report of a real fire, still burning 50 years later.